There was a very revealing exchange on Question Time this week. The topic was the Tory plan to ship asylum seekers to Rwanda if they arrive via irregular routes, and an audience member pointed out how that policy demonstrates a double standard.
The politicians who don't promote safe routes, safe and legal routes, they come illegally because you've blocked all the legal routes. If you want to stop that and you want to send people to Rwanda coming across from Calais, so you are proposing that all immigrants from Ukraine should also be going there as well, should be processed there as well, because surely people who flee Ukraine are passing through safe countries. So let's send them to Rwanda as well.
Now, that was a really interesting challenge. If the reason we should have no sympathy for people crossing the channel is that they've arrived via a safe country, so in that case, France, why are we so accepting of Ukrainians who have come almost universally via a safe neighbouring country, such as Poland or Moldova? Well, this is how Telegraph columnist Camilla Tomany responded.
Well, most of them are ending up in neighbouring countries. You know, Poland's taking
so they shouldn't be able to apply here.
But that's an interesting distinction, because much has been made. Well, why are we being so generous to the Ukrainians now and not as generous to a different group of people?
They're passing through a safe country.
Yeah,
we're not being generous to the Ukrainians. That's part of the problem.
Okay. But of course, whenever you're processing people coming into this country, you're going to have a list of priorities.
And what's
You're going to have to be... Well, exactly. That's the whole point. That's why it's so important to categorise people. But what are you going to do right now as Mariupal is being, bombarded with Russian missiles? Are you going to say to a mother and her child that she can't come because somebody else who might be already waiting in a hotel in safety in the UK takes more precedence?
That was Camilla Tomany arguing that the bombing of Mariupol should mean we treat Ukrainians differently from those from other war zones. And on one level, she is right. What's happening in Mariupol is a human catastrophe. As you can see from this drone footage, the city has been almost completely demolished by Russian bombardment. What were once apartment blocks, hospitals and offices are now burned out shells. It is, of course, almost impossible to know how many people have died there, as it's still under Russian control. But the city was home to 430,000 people. But while the bombing of Mariupol is horrific, it's not unique. This is Damascus, Syria in 2019. Again, you can see an entire city devastated, this time by Assad's attacks. The UN estimate that at least 350,000 Syrians were killed over the course of that war. 13.5 million people were displaced, with 6.8 million of those living as refugees around the world. Finally, this is drone footage of Mosul, Iraq in 2017. It shows the state of the city after a US bombing campaign to drive out ISIS. In that year, the city had a population of 1.5 million people, and it's estimated at least 1 million people have been killed and 9.2 million displaced since the start of the Iraq war. All this is to say that while the suffering of the Ukrainian refugees is severe, incredibly severe, it is not on any objective level different from that of people from other war zones to whom we have been less than welcoming. And it was noticeable that it was the only person of colour on the panel who wasn't taking Tomany's arguments at face value. Let's look at some more of that exchange. You'll see here Tory Employment Minister Mims Davis gets involved partway through this clip.
So they shouldn't be allowed to come here unless they go to Rwanda.
But it's a different scheme. I mean, Mims is more in tune with this, but it's a different specific scheme.
Why?
That's why the government introduced the family scheme. No, but that's why the government introduced the family scheme, because it was saying to Ukrainians, if you have somebody in Britain that you want to link up with, we will have an X amount.
I get what you're trying to say is there's a double. I get the point. You're trying to say there's a double standard here.
Yeah, I would like to take people in from Afghanistan, which you abandoned. Yeah. And I'm happy to do that. But you're not offering that to Afghani people or Syrian people. You're offering it to...
Okay, let's let Mims... Camilla, let's let Mims answer that.
So we are helping people from Afghanistan to resettle.
No.
Well, we are, because I'm doing it. I'm on committees and working with job centres and processing and helping people start that new life. And there's more people coming that we need to plan for as well. And of course, we want people to come and settle and have that new life and that new experience. But we also need to have homes for them. We need to have jobs for them.
What about the point that's being made about the double standard?
Need in the
what about the point about the double standard, which I think is the point you're making?
There isn't a double standard. It's schemes that work. And of course, we've got now a global global immigration policy where we can get skills from all around the globe and welcome people. We've obviously got the new trade deals and interventions with people around the globe, because not only people in the EU have skills and abilities and want to come here.
I think that's a different thing.
But it's important. We've had 185,000 people come here since 2015 who've been settled and supported in the Hong Kong situation, where we've needed and wanted to bring them here and give them that sanctuary. That doesn't change. Okay. What we're trying to do is break the model of people smuggling. And I think letting people die in the Channel is unacceptable.
You've made that point, Nims.
Many of the points tonight.
That was very confusing. There were loads of different arguments were mixed up with each other. Some of them were completely irrelevant. Points-based systems and trade deals have nothing to do with refugees. But on the question of asylum, Mims Davis said, we can't let in more Afghans because we need to have homes for them. Well, there are two responses to that. First, we've already found a temporary solution to this with Ukrainian refugees. Members of the public have been invited to host refugees, and 100,000 people have come forward. Why not expand that to other groups? The longer-term answer, of course, to the question of housing is if there is a housing shortage, it's only because no government has built council homes for the last 40 years. So terrible, terrible excuses there from that Tory politician. And Davis also claimed UK asylum policy contains no double standards. But then to make that point, she cites a group of people who've got special treatment, people from Hong Kong. Now, again, I'm not saying, just like with Ukrainians, we should not be against welcoming people from Hong Kong. People from Ukraine, people from Hong Kong is absolutely right. They should be welcome to this country. But so should other people. And it's hardly an answer to anyone who thinks we don't treat people from the Middle East or Africa in a manner that's fair to say, oh, look, but we treat the people from Hong Kong well. Now let's look at one last response from the Question Time audience member.
Can I say something about my personal experience? And that's, I tried to help a friend who's got 4 girls in Afghanistan, and they're suffering under Taliban. I'm happy to offer them home and pay for them. But you don't allow that policy. So you have that policy for certain countries, certain nationalities, certain races. I am happy to accommodate, but you don't offer that route. You don't offer that safe route. I was told that if they get out, if they were smuggled out of Afghanistan and they get themselves to India, they're not allowed to come to UK where they have family members. I'm not their family members. They have family members. But I was told by the Home Office that they can't because India is a safe country. So they have to stay there. Why Ukrainians can't stay in the safe countries as well and not be allowed here? I just want to know the double standard.
Okay. I think we've got the answer we're going to get from the government here. We hear your point. I'm going to move on and take another question.
We know there's a double standard on immigration policy. There has for a long time. While I am sympathetic to the argument that Ukrainian refugees are being treated differently to non-Europeans, Afghans or Iraqis, who, by the way, I think Britain has a special obligation to because we have participated in displacing them. Syrians, although that responsibility less so because we didn't literally catalyze massive decade-long conflicts in Syria. We did that in Iraq and Afghanistan. While I'm sympathetic to that, the truth is that I also suspect in the long term, Britain won't pull its weight with Ukraine either. Equally with Hong Kong. You know, if tomorrow 2 million Cantonese wanted to come to England, I don't think the Tories would be able to stomach it. I think big parts of their voting base would get very, very angry because their USP, the one reason why people vote for them more than any other party, yes, of course, rising house prices, dislike for Labour, they want lower taxes. But if you were looking for a big reason, it's immigration. So yes, there's a contradiction there. There's a double standard. But I think actually when push comes to shove, with regards to refugees from anywhere, Britain won't pull its weight relative to other countries in Europe.
We'll have to see. I mean, I'm sure relative to other countries in Europe, we won't. I think it's almost sort of the discursive double standard as well as the one in terms of practical policy that I think so many people find so offensive. And as I say, you know, it was very notable that it was the person of colour on the panel who was like, there's something going on here, Camilla, that you're not talking about, right? And I feel like it's in the coverage of the Ukraine crisis. And as we always say, we should be incredibly welcoming to Ukrainian refugees. They are fighting a just war. But when you see sort of, you know, the Times talking about how to make a Molotov cocktail if you're Ukrainian, you compare that to how, you know, we talk about the Palestinians. It shows how different people are valued different amounts. And that's not to say we should value the Ukrainians less. It's to say we should value the Palestinians, the Afghans, the Iraqis and the Syrians more. We've always known this, but this just sort of demonstrates how this is not because there is this sort of ideological objection to people resisting occupation with violence. It's because, you know, people didn't care about the Iraqis, they don't care about the Palestinians, and they don't care about the Syrians, even if their cities are getting bombed just as badly as Ukrainian cities right now.
Yeah, for me, the real outrage here is comparing Yemen to Ukraine. So in Yemen, if you hear, you know, the Houthi rebels are fighting against forces which are basically propped up now by the Saudis, you don't hear Houthis without hearing Iran-backed Houthi rebels. These are people who are taking on one of the best equipped air forces in the world using British and American technology. There is no conversation in Britain right now about whether or not we should be helping Yemenis come to Britain as one of our chief allies in West Asia and the Middle East, bomb them back to the Stone Age. So for me, that is the real double standard, because it's happening right now. You know, a couple of years ago, there were 1 million cases of cholera recorded in Yemen because basically the Saudis had destroyed clean drinking water infrastructure in that country. That is being done with our blessing, let alone even trying to mitigate it or deal with the displacement of people. So for me, that is the real double standard, Yemen and Ukraine. It's partly racial, but it's also partly to do with Britain's defense and security, quote unquote, interests abroad.